come on to share your knowledge. And that's one of our hashtags that we use. Really, Coach Rick, who you guys met just a little while ago in the UK, who coaches for the Olympians, he has that hashtag share the knowledge. And that's what we kind of adopted with Hope. And you guys have so much knowledge to give to all the different offensive line coaches, defensive line players, offensive line players across the globe. So I'm just glad that you guys took some time out to join us with Hope to share your knowledge with everybody else to promote American football across the world. And that's our platform. That's a platform we want to have here not just here in the U.S., but everywhere, because American football is played everywhere. That's one thing I'm really starting to learn. And the more we all can share our knowledge with each other across the board, the better the game is going to be in every continent and in every country. So I just want to say thank you two guys. And for everybody who's joined Hope, I want to say thank you. You guys are in for a treat. These are two of my favorite coaches. I put them right up there with Tony Dungy and Dick LeBeau. Those are my guys. And these guys were always great to me as a young coach. They always treated me with respect, even though I probably didn't know what I was exactly saying as a coach at times. But I definitely learned a lot from them. And I think you guys are going to also. And the way I know these two gentlemen, these coaches, that all three of us coach for the Raiders at the same time. As a matter of fact, I was also there when Coach Waufle, I wasn't there, but I played under Coach Waufle when he was there. So it was really fun.
All right, I'm up. I did a lot of reading of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I read this one thing that was said in 1837. It's very difficult to be simple enough to be good. Okay, and I always went by that philosophy. And when in my teaching, you want them all to think the same. And I'm gonna build on what Bob said, because in our classroom, we had to have the glass half full mindset. I didn't want to have negativity in that room. I wanted everybody to be positive. I wanted everybody to want to come to work every day and enjoy that room. And I get calls all the time, weekly, monthly, from all my defensive lines of the 4 teams I coached at in the NFL. And the one thing that they missed was our classroom. And this is the environment that I created. And it's what Bob said. It's a growth mindset. And with the growth mindset, you got to learn, before you can compete. And that is so true. I mean, but you got to every single day, that growth mindset is where I got to learn, and I got to get better. And I got to get better. I'm never, ever, ever satisfied. Howie Long said at the end of his career, we were good friends, and he told me, he says, Mike, I was miserable my whole career. I was miserable every day because I was never good enough. I was constantly trying to get better, And that's the attitude you got to have. And that's just football, part of it. The other thing is ownership. Everybody wants to go, I confess it's his fault. No, you take ownership for your mistakes. And we used to have it, don't worry about your mistakes, but make an effort not to have them repeat. If they kept repeating, we're going to cut you. But take ownership. It's okay to make mistakes. It is. And don't get down on yourself, okay? It's like Bob said, go to the next play, but don't get down on yourself. Know that you can make a mistake and continue on, okay? The other thing is it's team. That's all it is. It's team. You got each other's back. I think it's so important that players and coaches, do stuff off the field together, because it's such a bonding, and that way you'll fight for each other. And it's a war, man. It's a fist fight. When I watch NFL stuff, I go back and I watch stuff in the 70s and the 80s, because I like all those hits. they would throw about 85 guys out of the game. There wouldn't be anybody playing with some of the hits that were with the Steelers thing I watched the other day from the 70s. They would have thrown everybody out for every violation there is in the game. But game has changed, okay? The game has changed. I used to yell at the officials. You can hear me on row 23 across the field. And I used to say, Vince Lombardi, okay, Bronco Nagurski, Chuck Bednarik, they're rolling over in their graves, okay? You can't, this game is getting soft. Well, I think there's a fine line. There's a fine line because guys are bigger and stronger, faster. And there's people, it's a prevention of injury. It's a prevention of injury attitude. And I think that's what you have to take, okay? Now, what I did was, in my classroom, I created an environment where I didn't teach. I would just go, okay, Chris Long, you're up, okay? And Chris had to look at the play. He had to analyze the entire offense. He had to analyze the entire defense. And then he had to coach the entire defensive line. And then the next one, okay, Aaron Donald, you're up, okay? And same thing. And I went to the next one, Robert Quinn, you're up, okay? And they had to do it. Now, the thing in the classroom was that you were under attack at all times. So if you screwed up, they were just going to jump down your throat, okay? And you had to be at your best in front of your peers. And I felt like that was one of the greatest teaching methods there ever was. And I'm going to teach you something about offensive football, okay? First thing you look at when you look at an offensive formation, you look at the back set. Right now, you look at the back set, okay? And if there's two backs in the backfield, I used to say the first thing you say is I. You say I backs, okay? Everybody knows what I backs are. But you say I, okay? And then you keep your mouth shut. And then if it's I near, which is the fullbacks near the tight end, or I far, away from the tight end, that's basically the three formations you can get with two backs, regardless if it's a tight end and 12 personnel. Doesn't matter. It's two backs. Two backs or two backs. So it's I near, I far. Now, for everybody out there all over the world, for the rest of your career and the rest of your football knowledge, when you see one back in the backfield, it's either 2x2 or 3x1. End of story, okay? It may be a 4x1, it may be empty situations, but it's 2x2 or 3x1 formation. So if you want to know if it's 2x2 or 3x1, just look to your right. If there's one player over there, it's what? Oh, it's 3x1. Okay, if you look over there and there's two players, it's 2x2. It's fast information. One back, 2x2. Now you can take it farther from that in your knowledge and there's part of it. So every time those players would start in their classroom, the first thing they did was they go out there and they go, two backs, it's two backs, okay? It's I near, okay? Then they would either say, it's just a regular pro formation or slot. I mean, that's all they can get from out of that, basically, okay? But then if it's one back, okay, one back, it's 3x1 or 2x2, okay, it's 3x1, okay? We didn't get into all the trips, triples, tray, all that stuff, we just identified it. And then you could just see basically on the formation right there, and just carry it from there. But simplify it. That's what I was saying. It was fast. It was furious information. If I'm a right end and I break a huddle and I see it's one back, I'll look to my right. It's one receiver. It's 3x1. Everybody else is over there. Okay, if it's 1st and 10, they have a tendency to run to the three-man side, okay? You're going to be on the backside, okay? And you're going to be looking for cutback, bootleg, reverse. Okay, so fast, furious information. When each player talked in the classroom, they would give that information out. One more thing here. Let me just see something. Oh, everything in football. And I'm going to leave it with this, and I'm going to let Bob go into the technique now. And this is what I want you to understand. Everything in football is matchup and adjustment. Whether you're an offensive coordinator or whether you're a line coach like Bob and I, you have to match up and adjust. Okay, so I want Bob to go through his techniques right now, okay, and explain how he teaches it, and then I'll come back and tell you how we counter it. All right, thanks a lot.
Good job, Mike. All right, now, Mike's up, okay?
Good job, Bob. Okay,
go.
When I was a young coach, I went to the best defensive line coaches and walked away with nothing, and I was very frustrated. And then I went around and I visited the the all-pro players. I started out with Mean Joe Green and Randy White and Mark Gastineau and Joe Klecko and Howie Long, Lyle Alzado, and I went and met with all the best, asked them how to play the run, how they played the trap, how they pass rush. And I finished up studying film with Bruce Smith and Reggie White. And I learned more from the players than anything, but I developed a system because the coaches didn't have a system and I was frustrated. So I developed a system. And out of this system, when I teach it, it's okay to teach things slow. It's okay to start out and put them in the perfect position and have them master their technique. So we used to call it MMT, master my technique. Slow becomes smooth, smooth becomes fast, and speed wins in the NFL. And so you take the technique, you go through it, and just with your partner, pre-practice, post-practice, that's when MMT works. During special teams periods, I used to go MMT, and they work everything in slow motion, whether it was the run game or whether it was the rush. Now, the line of scrimmage, as Bob talked about, is all about feet. And I wanted to have a license plate when I was at the Raiders, and it said, and wanted it to be LPL FEET, low pad level equals feet. End of story. That's what Bob was just talking about, and that's the key thing. And what happens is that on defense now, it's all reaction. It's all reaction. Offense knows where and when the ball's going to start to play, and defense has to react. So the most important concept, okay, we're talking about defensive line play, and I'm getting into my system, is get off. Get off is the most important concept in defensive line play. And the more that you see when you're closer to the ball with your vision, the more that you see, the slower you're going to get off. And the less that you see, you're going to react quicker. It's like in a physiology lab. If we have the green light, the red light, and you have to respond in the reaction time when the lights change. If you're seeing the whole room, you're going to register a longer reaction time. Where if you just see little and take your eyes and focus on those small lights, your reaction time is going to be very quick. And it's the same thing with get off. The first thing I trained was their eyes. I had the ball, and I told them to look at the back tip of the football, the very back tip of the football, the tip of the football that goes towards the quarterback, and break it down and see very little to be able to help their get off. Now that would be in a pass rush situation or a blitz situation, but I trained their eyes to see little, Also took it one step further. We found the dominant eye, whether it was the left eye or the right eye, and then they would focus with their dominant eye for reaction time. And that's breaking it down. But I just go out there, okay, and the first thing we do is go eyes. And all they thought about was their eyes, and we get off in the football. Okay, the next rep, eyes, and you get off on the football. The next thing is on the line of scrimmage, everything, okay, on the line of scrimmage is force times velocity or strength times speed. And that's power. That's the definition of power in the physics lab. It's force times velocity, which is strength times speed. So you got to involve speed in your reaction to be able to maximize your strength. So when you go to get off, now I told the guys I could give a shit, get in a goddamn Karate Kid stance. I don't care. Get off on the ball. I think people waste way too much time on defense with stances. Al Davis said, he goes, Michael, why don't you get them in the fastest 40-yard stance? Okay, and that's what I did. I told him, I said, you get in a stance where you're comfortable, because the key thing is not reading. The key thing is getting into the blocker and control him before he gets his second step. Bob just educated you on step 1, step 2, step 3. If you're going to be successful on defense, You got to prevent them to get their second step. Now, what you do is that you attack with what I call your run hands. Well, Bob's talking about your placement of your hands. Well, the placement of your hands works best, not with your pinkies up. When your pinky is higher than any finger, your elbows are out, you're not in a line with the bones in your body, and then the bones lined all the way up from your feet, through your knees, through your hips, through your shoulders. You're not in a line, and you're not at full power and leverage. What you need to do is be thumbs up with both hands. When thumbs up, your arms are close to the midline of the body. When the arms are close to the midline of the body, you're at your strongest. No matter if you're in martial arts or if you're in boxing, you keep it close to the midline of the body, you're going to develop the most power. What you do is when you contact the blocker with your hands, you lift the blocker. You contact and you hit the blocker with the balls of your feet. Mike Tyson knocked everybody out because his punch came from the ball of his foot. The power came all the way through his legs, his hips, his back. I used to tell the players, you think you can just lock a guy out with your arms? No. If you had those big muscles on your legs, on your back, on your arms, how big your arms would be, maybe yes, but no. You have to utilize all the big muscles in the body to lift the blocker. When you lift the blocker, you take his leverage away. Low pad level equals feet, and then your feet can move. Otherwise, you're not going to have any success at all on the line of scrimmage. Now, the play is going to move one side or the other. You're going to feel the play going one side or the other. Immediately, when you feel that play going in that direction, you lock that arm out to that direction. And it goes from 2 to 1. 2 to 1 right now, but 2 to 1 to that side. And when you lock that arm out, your hips will gravitate in that direction. And it'll go towards the gap, the hole. Coordinators used to say, oh, Mike, he's not in his gap. Well, he's not in his gap, but that big offensive lineman's in his gap. We're plugging holes with his body. It's not going to always be perfect on the line of scrimmage. But what's going to happen is, as you're going 2 to 1, you're locking that arm out. And your hips will gravitate to that play, and you'll be in the direction of the play. Now, the players used to go, Coach, we haven't worked on pass rush, in the beginning of training camp for the whole first week. We haven't worked on pass rush at all. And I said, bullshit. I said, every time you do a lift to a long arm, okay, that is your power rush. That's your bull rush, whatever the hell you want to call it, okay? It's exactly the same thing. It's 2 to 1. You lift to a long arm. Okay, and you run your feet. Now, the only person I'm coaching right now, or the only 3 people, is Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, and number 97, Morgan Fox. Okay, and I'm in the Los Angeles area. Okay, and the only 3 guys that I work with on an individual basis. And if you watch Aaron, okay, I told him this week, I said, you're lifting him so easily now with both hands, but you got to go 2 to 1. Watch him. He'll go 2 to 1. Watch him this next week. Watch him tomorrow on Sunday night. It's 2 to 1. Okay, he's got to go more to the 1, because what happens is you get that extra leverage. Okay, and it's no different than Derrick Henry when he slammed dunked Josh Norman the other day. He basically did the 1. That's the best example of the 1. The leverage, the extension of that whole arm, okay, takes away the leverage away, and then you have a chance. The second thing that happens, when you go 2 to 1 and you go to 1, okay, it prevents holding. It gets you the separation you need, and it prevents holding. Bob's not going to say it, but every offensive line coach holds. I respect the heck out of it. I used to bitch, complain, yell at the officials, be the biggest crybaby there ever was about holding. And then I said, no, it ain't going to happen. When I started teaching 2 to 1, when I was getting to the 1 arm, the long arm right there, the 1 arm, I say 1 arm because of 2 to 1. Then the holding was much more controlled because of the one arm. Now, the next thing is, okay, when you go to escape a block, I used to teach coming over the top. I used to call it a jab. Some people call it a swim. But I really don't think that's the right escape. That's not the right escape. I think the right escape that should be taught 80% of the time should be a rip move. Because what it does, it lowers your hips. It puts you in better running position. When you run, you move your arms the same thing as a rip move. You move them the exact same movement. So when you escape blocks, I would teach the rip move 90% of the time. Sometimes you naturally come over the top because of positioning, but I would teach the rip move in the escape. Now let's go to run defense before I get too far into this, okay? Because I'm going to start going into pass rush next. In run defense, you need to shrink the run area. End of story. You need to shrink the run area. And how you shrink the run area, somebody, whether it's a safety, a linebacker, or a defensive end, has to set the edge, play side. End of story. I used to write on the board, STE. You get across that line of scrimmage and you set the edge. And nobody gets outside of you. Nobody gets outside of you. If you're the next man in, to be able to shrink the run area, you got to knock back. So that's what's happening. When you're going 2-to-1, you're knocking the blocker backwards. So you're going 2-to-1, his feet are going backwards. The Rams unit, the Bills unit, we were one of the most highly productive tackle for loss units. It wasn't even close for the second place unit in the National Football League for tackle for losses because of this formula. You set the edge, you get knocked back. The next players that's on play side. On the back side, what you need to do, because offenses want you to run and pursue. They want you to run and pursue. No. What you do on that backside of that ball, you establish an anchor point. You're not knocking things up the field. You get across the line of scrimmage, but now you're getting an anchor point. And OCU Manure used to go to me, he goes, "Hey, Waff," he goes, "You're over there. You're basically saying, here, kitty, kitty, here, kitty, kitty," because you establish that anchor point and you want that ball to cut back to you, and you have to be patient. You're still doing 2-to-1. You got that separation. You're waiting for that ball to come back to you at that anchor point. If you run and you're all the way over by those knockback guys, there's cutback lanes that happen. If you're the last man, okay, in this run defense system, if you're the last man on the line of scrimmage when it's when it's run away from you, the first thing you do is get across the line of scrimmage and start shuffling with your shoulders square. And the first thing you're thinking about is cutback. Now you got an anchor point there protecting you. He's protecting you, but you're thinking cutback, and you're shuffling with your shoulders square so you're in position to make a good tackle. If it's bootleg with those shoulders square, you sprint 45 degrees up the field, but 45 degrees to your right or to your left, depending on what side you are on. You sprint 45 degrees as fast as you can, and you will match up with the bootleg of the quarterback. The next thing you think about is reverse. With those shoulders square, you're going cutback, bootleg. When it's reverse, and as soon as you feel it's reverse, you turn and sprint right to the sidelines. And that's the only way you're going to be able to catch those fast wide receivers. Okay, so if you're the end man on the line of scrimmage, it's CBR, cutlet back, bootleg, reverse. So what you're doing is STE, set the edge, KB, knockback, AP, anchor point, CBR, cutback, bootleg, reverse. Shrink the field, shrink the run area. I'm done with the run game. That's it. It's over with, okay? Now let's go to pass rush, okay? The first thing that we do in pass rush is we study the offensive lineman. Just what Bob's talking about right there, okay? So when we're studying the set of the blocker, you study his foot that's closest to the football. The foot that's closest to the football, if he's on the right side, it's going to be his left foot. If he's the left guard, it's going to be his right foot. and you study that foot for the set. He's either going to be a short setter, he's going to be a deep setter, or he's going to be an over setter. End of story. End of story. Okay? If you want to study the body, okay, of the blocker and what he does, okay, as he sets, you study the outside foot. You study the outside foot. If that outside foot goes back easily, he has no anchor. If that outside foot goes behind his body, he turns. He turns. Okay? And if that outside foot, okay, comes out towards you, body mechanics wise, hold on one second, okay? I'm losing my thought. I'll come back to that, okay? Now, the next thing is we study the hands, okay? We study the hands. When you study the hands, if he is a low hand or no hand blocker, you come over the top with a chop. Now, Aaron Donald, the other day, Aaron perfected this chop, but we're doing it a little bit different now. I used to call it chop club. And the chop club, you would club to the back of the blocker. No, it's 2020. You have to adjust. Every year you have to adjust. So what do? You chop, and you hit with your complete forearm. You don't chop with your hand. It ain't Karate Kid. You don't chop it. You take your whole fist and forearm, and you go over and you try to break the arm. Now, I want every one of you guys to take your fingers and feel this, touch the top of your forearm, okay? And now take your fingers and touch the bottom part of your forearm. The bottom part of your forearm has no nerves. The top of the offensive lineman's forearm has many nerves. So hit that thing as hard as you can and cause pain, okay? Cause pain, because it's line of scrimmage play, it's football, and it never change in my mind. Now, the next thing you do is you control the man's shoulder, okay, with the second part of the move, when he has low hands or no hands. So what you try to do is you try to grab the back of the tricep. Aaron's been able to get that material right on the back of the shoulder pad. Not always there. I told him, you're lucky. You're lucky. It's not always there. But if you grab the back of that tricep, that'll control the shoulder. When you control a man's shoulder and you cause his body to turn, his hips will turn, and he cannot block you. He cannot block you, okay? Now, again, I used to come over the top, okay? So OCU Mignard and Robert Quinn were some of the best. They're some of the best with the chop club jab, okay? Well, it's not like that anymore. Again, I really believe the rip is better. I watched TJ Watt. I mean, he's just a great ripper, okay? It puts you in a lower leverage position, and it makes you faster. And you're doing everything. You got to do fractions of time. You got to beat fractions of time as a rusher. So you rip, you keep it close. So it was a chop. Okay, grab that tricep. Okay, and then rip. Okay, now you don't rip to run. You don't rip really high. The secret is when you rip, you stop halfway and you take the point of your elbow and you dig that point of your elbow into the blocker. Take that point of the elbow and turn it into the blocker. If it's your left elbow, it controls your right hip. That left elbow controls the right hip. The right hip will turn. If I came back coaching again, I would never use the hoops again. I would never use the hoops again. We would do everything on bone, flesh on flesh. We did a lot of it anyways. Guys used to complain. I said, you get paid a lot of money. Shut the hell up, okay? It's bone on bone, flesh on flesh, and that's the way we're going to work. The only equipment I would use is, the pop-ups, just so they can get into a rhythm of pass rush with movement, with speed, okay, and then finish on the quarterback's arm on a dummy. But otherwise, I wouldn't use. Only equipment I use is each other. End of story. So save a lot of money, coaches out there. Put a lot of the equipment people out of business. You work bone on bone, flesh on flesh. Okay, bone on bone, flesh on flesh, and make it hurt, or make it work, so they understand. And then you can do MMT in slow motion, okay, to be able to put it all together. And then you go full motion, full speed, doing the exact same movements. Now, with that elbow turning in, Aaron's hip turned really fast, and I yelled at him Monday night on the phone. I go, Aaron, what are you jumping on Alex Smith's back? He just broke his leg. I said, you just broke his leg his first time, and you jump on his back like you're a jaguar jumping on your prey, you know? I said, what the hell are you doing, man? The guy has a bad leg. You know, he's laughing. But the thing is that if you get a chance to look at it, it's one of the most beautiful executed techniques on the new stuff that we've been working on, okay? So it's chop, it is grab the back of the tricep, it's rip, and then you dig the point of the elbow, and now you're doing the hoop. The most natural hoop against a blocker. Next one. If he's a rapper, if his hands are outside, if it's a rapper, 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1. Okay, I'm done. Okay. If he's a puncher, 2 to 1, 2 to 1. I'm done. I'm done. You understand all that. Okay. All right. And if he's a puncher, okay, and on his hands, you take both hands on the outside. Now, Aaron did this at Pitt, and he actually taught me this. And I was watching his tape at the University of Pittsburgh, and he actually took both of his hands and he clubbed basically with a swiping action with both hands outside a real tight puncher. Both hands outside a real tight puncher. And it's okay if he's a puncher, come on, give him your chest, try to punch me. Have him try to punch you, okay? And then you take both of those hands and you swipe and you go to a rip to the point right now. You swipe both hands. It's like you're double clubbing those arms, and then you rip to the point. You rip to the point. So you're clubbing like hell. You can actually grab, you can club, you know, kind of swipe with that inside hand and really try to grab the back of that tricep too with the other hand. But rip to the point and finish it. Okay, and that's the matchup on a puncher. Okay, you can sometimes get a 2 to 1 in there on a puncher, and you're doing the same thing of getting the length of your arm, but 2 to 1s for rappers, punchers, and the swipe for punchers. Okay. And then over the top with low hands, no hands. And that's it.
Coach?
Now, pass rush games.
Coach?
Okay? Pass rush games have to be worked at levels, okay? Bill Callahan, one of the greatest offensive line coaches in the NFL. He's at the Cleveland Browns right now doing a fabulous job. And he told me that, he says, when it is a tackle first, then the end coming in, it's best to work up the field first, okay? And then when it is a end first and then it's a tackle second, the penetrator has to go 2 to 1 on the guard, 2 to 1 on the guard. He has to be physical. It doesn't work otherwise. You have to be physical in your games. You have to be. And so those are some of the things that I think for the games that are added in. So you learn how to match up in pass rush. You learn how to stop the run with the run formula, okay, from set the edge all the way to CBR, okay? And you learn how to do the games, and I'm done, man. I appreciate it. Any questions?
Coach, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sebastian speaking. Someone is asking on the chat if it would be able to explain 2 to 1 one more time, please.
Okay. All right. Can they see me?
Yeah.
They can? Okay. All right. Now watch. Right? Watch my hands. So instead of having the pinkies up right here, if you do this, your elbows are out. Okay. So when you come in, it's thumbs up. Okay. So you're going to lift the blocker. So you're going to lift, but when you lift, you're running your feet. So you lift and you go to the side right there to 1. So it's 2 to 1 right now. And what that does, that's that side. So if the pressure's going this way, it's 2 to 1 right now. Okay. If the game's going this way, all right, you're lifting, you feel the pressure, it's 1 right there. Prevents the holding. Your hips will gravitate that way. I used to say it's like a magnet, man. Your hips are a magnet because you're doing this. Your hips naturally go that way with it. Naturally, just run. And I tell the players, look at that hand. And you just look at that hand, your hips will run right over there. Okay, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. That's 2 to 1.
That's very clear.
Guys, you hear what Coach Mike just said? Mike was talking. He's saying lift. And what is he doing when he's saying lift? He's changing the spine angle of the blocker. Okay, he's creating leverage. He's changing the spine angle of the blocker. The blocker should stay condensed. He's trying to get him out of that. Okay, same thing we're trying to do to him. We're trying to get him out. We're trying to change his spine angle, period.
Coach Mike, we got a question from Owen who asks how to work on DN react option, quarterback handoff or quarterback keep.
What's that now? Hey, one more time.
He's asking.
Sorry, Coach. Owen? Oh, rather. Yeah.
No, I just want to know the question. The question.
He's asking how does the defensive end react to an option if the quarterback keeps it or if he gives it to the running back?
Well, it just depends on the defense. Okay, if it's got to, a linebacker's got to protect the defensive end. If he's going to sell out on the quarterback, okay, or the linebacker has to protect the inside if the defensive end is going to string out the quarterback. So it goes along with the second level player. They're working together.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that's easy. Another question for you, Coach Mike, was can you explain the double swipe and what is the footwork?
I'll show you the action. I'll show you the action right here. It's this hand. Okay, here's the hands out here. So what you're doing is you're hitting this hand right here. Now I naturally turn my shoulders right here, and I'm turning my hips, and then you take this hand, and I would take this hand right here and just grab the tricep area and pull yourself through and rip, okay? But it's both hands on the outside of the puncher's arms. Both hands on the outside. And I think this hand knocks it away. This hand grabs the tricep. In 2020, this hand grabs the tricep in 2020.
Okay. And he wants to know what is the footwork that goes with that.
You don't worry about it. You know, I never, ever in my entire life taught footwork and had him think about, coaches go, well, flip the hips there. I'm going to flip the hips, guy. Flip the hips. Flip nothing, man. The upper body, flip nothing. You just run your ass off and you do everything technically with your upper body. The hell with you're going to slow people down. You know, if you start thinking about your feet when you're running a 40-yard dash, you're going to run about a 6'7", okay? So you don't think about your feet. You just do the upper body stuff, and your feet will take you to the quarterback.
Coach Bob, we got a question from Stefan. He asks you, how do you teach your O-line to prevent D-line to put your hands up to deflect the ball?
Oh, all right, when the defensive line puts their hands up?
Yep.
Oh, my God. It's usually too late, to be honest.
When I played, I hit the nuts, but
there's a pressure point where they're going to stop because they can't be running and jumping at the same time. It's tough for them to do that.
You just punch in the gut. You
Right?
just punch in the gut and try to get our hands down. That's
Right.
what they do. The only time I tell defensive linemen to really get their hands up, okay, is based on snap to release. I timed every snap to release. If that snap to release is less than 2 seconds, and it's no backs where it happens an awful lot, you're just going to approach the blocker straight on, and you're going to get your hands up to block the pass. That's the only time I ever taught it, was when the ball's coming out quick.
When they're tired in the fourth quarter, how do you pump them up?
Oh, how you pump them up? Okay, one thing that I do is that I really give the best rushers a rest at about 7 to 8 minutes, left in the game. All right, just make sure that they're resting so that they can be at their absolute best in the 2 minutes, whether it's at the end of the half or at the end of the game. They're professionals. They should be able to pump themselves up to get the job done.
I appreciate Coach Mike, Coach Bob. You guys are awesome as always. I think everybody got a lot out of it. It's been 2 hours. It feels like it's been 20 minutes. Yeah, you guys gave a lot of good information. And if anybody on the call has any information or any questions, they can just reach out to us at hopethroughfootball@gmail.com, and we can answer the questions for them. But I appreciate you guys, and everybody has a blessed weekend.